Nate Tucker, I'm Nate Tucker. Nate Tucker, I'm Nate Tucker.
What is up, little Nates, and welcome to the second episode of my newly branded vlog, Nate Talks Movies and Beyond. And today we are going to be reviewing one of my favorite movies that came out this summer. Now, before we get started, I just want to give a big thanks out to all the little Nates out there and any of the first-time viewers last week who tuned into my first episode. Now, when I decided to bring that channel, I was hoping that the first episode would get a good amount of views. I was kind of hoping maybe somewhere close to 100. To my surprise, I'm surprised that only after 3 days, this first video got over 900 views. So yeah, guys, I just want to thank you guys for tuning in last week. Thank you guys for all the support, and I hope you guys continue to watch my channel as I dive deeper into movies, action figures, and Legos. Now today, I am going to be talking about a movie that came out in July. In this movie, Tom Holland, Zendaya, and Jon Bernthal give outstanding performances. I know what you little Nates are thinking, and no, I am not referring to Spider-Man Brand New Day. However, how crazy is it that we see these three actors in two different movies together in the same month? That's just crazy. Well, I am actually referring to Christopher Nolan's adaptation of Homer's The Odyssey. Now, along with Tom, who plays Telemachus, Zendaya, who plays Athena, and John, who plays Menelaus, Odyssey's all-star cast also consists of Matt Damon as the hero Odysseus, Anne Hathaway as his wife Penelope, Robert Pattinson as the main villain Antinous, Charlize Theron as Calypso, and Lupita Nyong'o as the legendary Helena Troy. Now, before I dive deeper into Christopher Nolan's brilliant execution of how he brought this story to life, I do want to discuss the plot. Now, I just want to make the note that I am just discussing the plot of the movie, not the book, because I have never read the book. After the Greeks' victory in Troy, after the Trojan War is won, Odysseus spends 10 years trying to get home. Now, the reason why it took Odysseus 10 years to get home is along the way, he and his men have to face many challenges, and along with these challenges comes many losses. For example, Polyphemus traps them in his cave for several days, and he's trying to eat them, and eventually Odysseus and the remaining soldiers do escape. Now, the next challenge is the Wrath of Poseidon, and this is a result of them stabbing Polyphemus, which is Poseidon's son, in the eye before they left. Now, the next challenge is the giant Lastrygonians, which are these big guys in metal suits, impossible for them to beat. They flee the island, but not before the Lastrygonians end up murdering most of Odysseus' men along with a bunch of their ships. Now, after that, they deal with Circe, which she turns Odysseus' men into a bunch of pigs. Now, after Odysseus finally gets her to turn them back to humans, they head out over to Hades, where Odysseus is told by Tiresias that Odysseus' men will die before Odysseus finally gets home. Leaving Hades, they head out to what I'm just dubbing as the Sea of Monsters, because this is basically the same thing we see in Percy Jackson. They face these sirens along with these other two monsters. They finally do get past them, but not before a couple of the men die. Now, the final obstacle, as for Odysseus' men, is the cattle of the sun god. Over in Hades, Tiresias told Odysseus that his men would die if they ate the cattle of the sun god. Now, at first, Odysseus is telling them not to eat the cattle. At first, they're able to, resist temptation, but after weeks of being on that island, they give in, they slaughtered the cattle, and once they are finally able to leave the island, Zeus summons a storm, which destroys the ship and kills Odysseus' men. Now, the final obstacle for Odysseus is he ends up on this island where Calypso lives. Now, Calypso, infatuated by Odysseus, she heals him, also keeps him her prisoner there for about 7 years by feeding him lotus flowers, which makes him forget who he is. Now, eventually, feeling pity for him after 7 years, she helps him remember who he is, and she finally lets him off the island. Now, he builds a raft and is on it, lying on it on the sea for days, maybe even weeks, but when he finally hits land, he ends up where? Ithaca. Now, switching gears from Odysseus to what's been happening in Ithaca. So, Odysseus has been gone for 20 years. First 10 years fighting in the Trojan War, the second 10 years him trying to get home. Now, Telemachus, his son, and Penelope, his wife, that even though they don't know what happened to him, they do hold out hope that he is still alive and that he will return. As for other things happening in Ithaca, suitors have taken place living in Odysseus' house, and they all seek to marry his wife Penelope. Telemachus, knowing that Ithaca needs a king again and also wants to keep his mother from having to marry one of the suitors, he sets out on a journey to find out what happens to his father and hopefully find him. So that journey sends him over to Sparta, where he speaks with Menelaus, and while speaking with Menelaus tells him about the final time he saw Odysseus, which was the siege of Troy. And also Menelaus kind of just helps Telemachus see that he needs to take up the mantle, that he needs to be king. However, before Telemachus can get back to Ithaca, Antinous learns that about Telemachus's plans and him wanting to marry his mom, him wanting to have the power. He teams up with the other suitors and they send bandits out to murder Telemachus. However, this murder is unsuccessful because who shows up to help Telemachus? Odysseus. Although Telemachus at that time does not know it's Odysseus. So basically that is the point when Telemachus and Odysseus reunites. And kind of sum up the plot, basically the final thing that takes place is Penelope holds an archery competition, and this will decide who will get to marry her. Now, something important to know about this tournament is that the bow that is being used for the tournament was Odysseus' bow, and the thing about his bow is that only he has been able to string it. Now, a lot of other people try, and all of them failed until Odysseus shows up and he strings that bow and he shoots that arrow, and then everyone knows it's Odysseus. And then after that, all war breaks out. Everyone's trying to gang up on Odysseus, but none of them succeed. And by the end of it, Odysseus, he takes them all down. They're all dead, including Antinous. And the movie wraps up by Telemachus taking up the throne from Odysseus. And what happens to Odysseus and Penelope in the end? They leave Ithaca, they sail out into the sunset, and they seek peace and exile elsewhere after all that they've had to face for the past 20 years. And that, guys, is the plot to the Odyssey. So now that I've discussed the plot and as well as some of the main characters, let's dive into Christopher Nolan and his execution for this film. Now, I will say that Christopher Nolan is probably one of my favorite directors. He has filmed so many great movies, such as the Dark Knight trilogy, which will forever be my favorite Batman movies, as well as Christian Bale being my favorite Batman. Then we have Interstellar, which is like a cool space-ish kind of movie. Then his latest project before Odyssey was Oppenheimer, which tells the story behind the man who helped build the atomic bomb. And what I do really love about Christopher Nolan is that he strives to take on movies that have a great story to tell, and also he really tries to dive deep into the world of the story as well as the characters of the story. And in Odyssey, we see him do that. After doing Oppenheimer, from watching Odyssey, I can see he wanted his next movie to be big, be a banger. And so I can just see that from watching the Odyssey, we see that Christopher Nolan, he pushed for all the stops. He didn't strive for okay, this is okay. No, he wanted excellence for this film. And I say the biggest way that Christopher Nolan strive for excellence when making the Odyssey, in a way that he would make the Odyssey be a movie that would honestly kind of change in ways maybe movies were made, is that he made the Odyssey be the first movie that was completely screened with IMAX 70mm film cameras. Literally over 2 million feet of IMAX 70mm film was used to shoot this movie. Beyond just making it be the first movie that was shot this way, I see Nolan wants to do this because the thing about IMAX that really makes it separate itself from other kind of screening formats is that it really lets you see more going from up to down. And I feel that was completely necessary for shooting a lot of this movie. helps us see more of the landscapes and the scenery in the film. And let's talk about the Cyclops. Like Cyclops are big, tall beings, and say if we were to shoot with a regular one, like maybe say we could probably see all of it from far, but like up close we really couldn't see all of it. We would probably see portions of it, like see the head. But with IMAX, with the 70mm, we were able to see all the Cyclops, even in up close shots. Another way we see Nolan strive for excellence for the Odyssey is that he wanted to do as much practical shooting as possible, so he had the Odyssey shot in 6 different countries. It is shot in Morocco, Western Sahara, Greece, Italy, Iceland, Scotland, and the US. Another thing that really Nolan really did with the Odyssey, as well as really he does with a lot of his other films when it comes to directing, is that he really does dive into different themes that we see in the movie, and as well as how it kind of affects other characters. And I feel really one of the biggest things we see in Odyssey is one, deceit. Deceit is used a lot in this film. First shot we see in the Odyssey is the Trojan horse, and they say it's like a gift, we surrender, but truthfully no, it was not a gift. Actually, the soldiers were hiding inside that Trojan horse, and once that horse was brought into the city of Troy at night, they break out of the horse, they kill all the guards, and then they open the gates, and they basically just fully kill on all the soldiers, even women and children. Attack! Other way we see deceit is, say, for example, that guard we see at the beginning of the movie that shot with Nara Sinan. I guess fully they probably didn't tell him the full plan. Say hey, I'm not probably I'm dying for a good cause, but really I'm not. So really what happened with the siege, and also what happened with the soldier Sinan, just really shows that the Greeks really were not honorable people. They might seem nice at first, or they might seem hey, they're coming to reason, might be willing to surrender now, but no, they are tricksters, and the moment you let your guard down, they will come and they will steal and pillage and kill all your warriors, and even some women and children. The next thing that I love about Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey is that it includes multiple different genres, a lot like his other movies. It includes action, it includes romance, it includes mystery, and it even includes horror. And I gotta say, I love all the ways he kind of makes it to where these different genres are included in the film. Action, obviously, I gotta say, I'd probably say my favorite fight scene in the film, it's probably going to be the final fight scene where Odysseus is fighting off all these suitors in the house, and seriously, it is one against probably say about 100 men or so, about that. And you know what, he beats all of them, and any of the living ones, they surrender. So yeah, I mean, really, that just feels like a classic hero moment, and Matt Damon does a great job with that fight, so good. Now, the next fight after that fight that I really do love is the Siege of Troy. Seriously, that is well planned, and I love the music that was used in that scene. The composer really did a great job with that number for the score. Really, just besides maybe the way people fought and the music, really what I love about that action sequence is that really kind of just does show the ugliness of war and of the Greeks, and just say and this ain't some kind of victorious hero moment. This is basically an ugly part we would see in a war, where people just don't hold back and they just kill and kill. Plus, John Berthold is a beast. Now, like I say, besides action and romance, which is obviously, stuff like marriage, want to get home to your wife and kids, blah, blah, blah. We also see, aspects of, a horror genre. And, I feel say, some of the basic stuff is stuff when they were in the cave with the Cyclops, there's, that scene where, Polyphemus closes puts his rock in front of the entrance. Can't really see anything in there besides the men because they're close by the fire. You feel like during that moment it's like the part in a horror film like where you're waiting for that jump scare. I feel like when it happened I was just gonna be scared. But I feel like one of like the more like the bigger parts of the film that we see the horror genre in is when they were on Cersei's island and she turned them into a bunch of pigs. I feel like, it wasn't like, hey, pippity boppity boo, you pigs. It's more like it was done like in a way you would see like in a horror film. And honestly, there was some weird, gross stuff going on. There was even a point where she's literally putting her hands into a man's mouth, and I gotta say, yeah, no. Now, out of all the kind of genres we see throughout this film, I gotta say my favorite genre that I see in this film, as well as the way that Nolan made it, that this genre was included in the film, is the mystery genre. And I gotta say, probably one of my favorite parts of how the mystery genre is included in this film. Like we see flashbacks of Odysseus' journey home, and like it's not towards say kind of middle part of the film, beginning of the end film part of the film, where we really see like all of how he ended up on Calypso's island. My favorite parts of how mystery was included, I'm probably gonna have to go with like the whole like Athena thing. So like near the beginning of the film, we see Athena, aka Zendaya, with Odysseus on the island. And I feel like in some mythology, like when Athena shows up, she doesn't always appear in her usual natural form. Like we kind of wondering like why is she appearing in that form, and I love how they really kind of keep that a mystery until like near the end when like we see more of the siege of Troy and we see them kill the priestess, which looks exactly like the form of who Athena is portraying in Odysseus' mind. I feel like obviously one of the reasons why Athena is appearing to Odysseus in this form is because of his guilt of all the bad things that he and the Greeks did during the Trojan War, of how they basically defiled Athena, defiled her statue in Troy, and killed the priestess. Now, to wrap up Nolan's execution of this film, the biggest final things I gotta say is how he makes this film to be non-linear. And I'd probably say, like, one, he does do this with a lot of his films. We see this in Batman Begins, Dark Knight Rises, we see it in Oppenheimer. We see that, honestly, a lot in Oppenheimer. So basically with this whole non-linear thing, really I do kind of like that kind of a movie. I like kind of having some mystery behind the past. Like that they don't reveal all of that, like, kind of beforehand, but rather later. Kind of just really does keep us invested. However, I will say, like, for people who might not be familiar with the book, who have never read it, I'll probably say there are some portions where, by doing this, it kind of does get the audience confused a little bit. Now, it's not like a big thing, but that, like, the way Nolan did it throughout the film, like, parts of it, I do gotta say, it kind of did make me like some of it a bit less. So yeah, that is all I gotta say about Nolan's execution of the Odyssey. And to wrap this up, guys, I'm just gonna have to give this movie, honestly, 9, mostly because of the whole non-linear thing and me somewhat being confused, and how, like, if you've never read the book before, some parts are kind of confusing to keep up with. But overall, I do gotta say, I think that Christopher Nolan really did a great job with this film. I love how really he paid so much attention of how the movie was made, like CGI wise, scenery wise, shot wise. It's all so good. And I gotta say, guys, if you guys have not seen it yet, and if you live near a theater that has an IMAX 70mm screen, you should go watch it. The ticket did cost me about $35, but it was still worth it because this movie was made to be seen on that kind of screen. So yeah, guys, go see it in IMAX 70mm if you can. Well, guys, that officially wraps my review for the Odyssey, and I just really hope that you guys enjoyed what I had to say on the film, and I do hope that you guys tune in for next week's episode, where I will be doing a review on Spider-Man, Brand New Day. Who knows, maybe I'll have a special guest to talk with about the movie. Guys, that is a wrap. I will see you guys next week, and as I always say, Nate out.